No, he wasn't on the list, I say. I saw him Sunday, though. Think he'd have made the list, him being your cousin and all, she says wryly. It's just one more part of the lie the capital has concocted. When Peeta and I made it to the final 8 in the Hunger Games, they sent reporters to do a personal stories about us. When they asked about my friends, everyone directed them to Gale. But it wouldn't do, what with the romance I was playing out in the arena, to have my best friend be Gale. He was too handsome, too male, and not the least bit willing to smile and play nice for the cameras. We do resemble each other, though, quite a bit. We have that seam look. Dark straight hair, olive skin, gray eyes. So some genius made him my cousin. I didn't know about it until we were already home, on the platform at the train station, and my mother said, "Your cousins can hardly wait to see you." Then I turned and saw Gale and Hazel, and all the kids waiting for me. So what could I do but go along? Greasy Say knows we're not related, but even some of the people who have known us for years seem to have forgotten. I just can't wait for the whole thing to be over, I whisper. I know, says Greasy Say, but you've got to go through it to get to the end of it. Better not be late. A light snow starts to fall as I make my way to the Victor's village. It's about half a mile walk from the square in the center of town, but it seems like another world entirely. It's a separate community built around a beautiful green dotted with flowering bushes. There are 12 houses, each large enough to hold 10 of the one I was raised in. 9 stand empty, as they always have. The 3 in use belong to Hamish, Peeta, and me. The houses inhabited by my family and Peeta give off a warm glow of life. Lit windows, smoke from the chimneys. Bunches of brightly colored corn are fixed to the front windows as decoration for the upcoming harvest festival. However, Hamish's house, despite the care taken by the groundskeeper, exudes an air of abandonment and neglect. I brace myself at his front door, knowing it will be foul, then push inside. My nose immediately wrinkles in disgust. Hamish refuses to let anyone in to clean, and does a poor job himself. Over the years, the odor of liquor and vomit, boiled cabbage and burned meat, unwashed clothes and mouse droppings have intermingled into a stench that brings tears to my eyes. I wade through a litter of discarded wrappings, broken glass, and bones to where I know I will find Hamish. He sits at the kitchen table, his arms sprawled across the wood, his face in a puddle of liquor, snoring his head off. I nudge his shoulder. "Get up," I say loudly, because I've learned there's no subtle way to wake him. His snorting stops for a moment, questioningly, and then resumes. I push him harder. "Get up, Hamish, it's tour day." I force the window up, inhaling deep breaths of the clean air outside. My feet shift through the garbage on the floor, and I unearth a tin coffee pot and fill it in the sink. The stove isn't completely out, and I manage to coax a few live coals into a flame. I pour some ground coffee into the pot, enough to make sure the resulting brew will be good and strong, and set it on the stove to boil. Hamish is still dead to the world. Since nothing else has worked, I fill a basin with icy cold water and dump it on his head, and spring out of the way. A guttural animal sound comes from his throat. He jumps up, kicking his chair 10 feet behind him and wielding the knife. I forgot he always sleeps with one clutched in his hand. I should have pried it from his fingers, but I'd have a lot on my mind. Spewing profanity, he slashes the air for a few moments before coming to his senses. He wipes his face on his shirt sleeve and turns to the windowsill where I perch, just in case I need to make a quick exit. "What are you doing?" he sputters. "You told me to wake you an hour before the cameras come," I say. "What?" he says. "Your idea," I insist. He seems to remember. "Why am I all wet?" "I couldn't shake you awake," I say. "Look, if you wanted to be babied, you should have asked Peeta." "Asked me what?" Just the sound of his voice twists my stomach into a knot of unpleasant emotions like guilt, sadness, and fear. And longing. I might as well admit there's some of that too. Only it is too much competition to ever win out. I watch as Peter crosses to the table, the sunlight from the window picking up the glint of fresh snow in his blond hair. He looks strong and healthy, so different from the sick, starving boy I knew in the arena, and you can barely even notice his limp now. He sets a loaf of fresh-baked bread on the table and holds out his hand to Hamish. "Asked you to wake me without giving me pneumonia," says Hamish, passing over his knife. He pulls off his filthy shirt, revealing an equally soiled undershirt, and rubs himself down with the dry part. Peter smiles and douses Hamish's knife in white liquor from a bottle on the floor. He wipes the blade clean on his shirt tail and slices the bread. Peter keeps all of us in fresh-baked goods. I hunt, he bakes, Hamish drinks. We all have our own ways to stay busy, to keep thoughts of our time as contestants in the Hunger Games at bay. It's not until he's handed Hamish the heel that he even looks at me for the first time. "Would you like a piece?" "No, I ate at the Hog," I say. "But thank you." My voice doesn't sound like my own. It's so formal, just as it's been every time I've spoken to Peter since the cameras finished filming our happy homecoming and we returned to our real lives. "You're welcome," he says back stiffly. Hamish tosses his shirt somewhere into the mess. "Brr! You two have got a lot of warming up to do before showtime." He's right, of course. The audience will be expecting the pair of lovebirds who won the Hunger Games, not two people who can barely take a look in the eye. But all I say is, "Take a bath, Hamish." Then I swing out the window, drop to the ground, and head across the green to my house. The snow has begun to stick, and I leave a trail of footprints behind me. At the door, I pause to knock the wet stuff from my shoes before I go in. My mother's been working all day and night to make everything perfect for the cameras, so it's no time to be tracking up her shiny floors. I barely stepped inside when she's there, holding my arm as if to stop me. "Don't worry, I'm taking them off here," I say, leaving my shoes on the mat. My mother gives an odd, breathy laugh and removes the game bag loaded with supplies from my shoulder. "It's just snow. Did you have a nice walk?" "Walk?" She knows I've been in the woods half the night. Then I see the man standing behind her in the kitchen doorway. One look at his tailored suit and surgically perfected features, and I know he's from the capital. Something's wrong. It was more like skating. It's really getting slippery out there. "Someone's here to see you," says my mother. Her face is too pale, and I can hear the anxiety she's trying to hide. "I thought they weren't due until noon." I pretend not to notice her state. "Did Cinna come early to help me get ready?" "No, Katniss, it's—" my mother begins. "This way, please, Miss Everdeen," says the man. He gestures down the hallway. It's weird to be ushered around your own home, but I know better than to comment on it. As I go, I give my mother a reassuring smile over my shoulder. Probably more instructions for the tour. They've been sending me all kinds of stuff about my initiatory and what protocol will be observed in each district. But as I walk toward the door of the study, a door I've never even seen closed until this moment, I can feel my mind begin to race. Who's here? What do they want? Why is my mother so pale? "Go right in," says the capital man, who has followed me down the hallway. I twist the polished brass knob and step inside. My nose registered the conflicting scents of roses and blood. A small white-haired man, who seems vaguely familiar, is reading a book. He holds up a finger as if to say, "Give me a moment." Then he turns, and my heart skips a beat. I'm staring into the snake-like eyes of President Snow. Chapter 2. In my mind, President Snow should be viewed in front of marble pillars hung with oversized flags. It's jarring to see him surrounded by the ordinary objects in the room, like taking the lid off a pot and finding a fanged viper instead of stew. What could he be doing here? My mind rushes back to the opening days of the other victory tours. I remember seeing the winning tributes with their mentors and stylists. Even some high government officials have made appearances occasionally, but I have never seen President Snow. He attends celebrations in the capital. Period. If he's made the journey all the way from his city, it can only mean one thing. I'm in serious trouble. And if I am, so is my family. A shiver goes through me when I think of the proximity of my mother and sister to this man who despises me, will always despise me, because I outsmarted his sadistic Hunger Games, made the capital look foolish, and consequently undermined his control. All I was doing was trying to keep Peeta and myself alive. Any act of rebellion was purely coincidental. But when the capital decrees that only one tribute can live, and you have the audacity to challenge it, I guess that's a rebellion in itself. My only defense was pretending that I was driven insane by a passionate love for Peeta, so we were both allowed to live, to be crowned victors, to go home and celebrate, and wave goodbye to the cameras and be left alone. Until now. Perhaps it is the newness of the house, or the shock of seeing him, or the mutual understanding that he could have me killed in a second, that makes me feel like the intruder, as if this is his home, and I'm the uninvited party. So I don't welcome him, or offer him a chair. I don't say anything. In fact, I treat him as if he's a real snake, the venomous kind. I stand motionless, my eyes locked on him, considering plans of retreat. I think we'll make this whole situation a lot simpler by agreeing not to lie to each other, he says. What do you think? I think my tongue is frozen, and speech will be impossible, so I've surprised myself by answering back in a steady voice. Yes, I think that would save time. President Snow smiles, and I notice his lips for the first time. I'm expecting snake lips, which is to say none. But his are overly full, the skin stretched too tight. I have to wonder if his mouth has been altered to make him more appealing. If so, it was a waste of time and money, because he's not appealing at all. My advisors were concerned you would be difficult. But you're not planning on being difficult, are you? He asks. No, I answer. That's what I told him. I said, any girl who goes to such lengths to preserve her life isn't going to be interested in throwing it away with both hands. And then there's her family to think of. Her mother, her sister, and all those cousins. By the way he lingers on the word cousins, I can tell he knows that Gale and I don't share a family tree. Well, it's all on the table now. Maybe that's better. I don't do well with the ambiguous threats. I'd much rather know the score. Let's sit. President Snow takes a seat at the large desk of polished wood, where Prim does her homework and my mother her budgets. Like our home, this is a place that he has no right, but ultimately every right, to occupy. I sit in front of the desk on one of the carved, straight-back chairs. It's made for someone taller than I am, so only my toes rest on the ground. I have a problem, Miss Everdeen, says President Snow. A problem that began the moment you pulled those poisonous berries in the arena. That was the moment when I guessed that if the game makers had chosen between watching Peeta and me commit suicide, which would mean having no victor and letting us both live, they would take the latter. If the head game maker, Seneca Crane, had any brains, he'd have blown you to dust right then. But he had an unfortunate sentimental streak. So here you are. Can you guess where he is? He asks. I nod, because, by the way he says it, it's clear that Seneca Crane has been executed. The smell of roses and blood has grown stronger now, that only a desk separates us. There's a rose in President Snow's lapel, which at least suggests a source of the flower perfume, but it must be genetically enhanced, because no real rose reeks like that. As for the blood, I don't know. After that, there was nothing to do but let you play out your little scenario. And you were pretty good, too, with a loved-crazed schoolgirl bit. The people in the capital were quite convinced. Unfortunately, not everyone in the district saw your act, he says. My face must register at least a flicker of bewilderment, because he addresses it. This, of course, you don't know. You have no access to information about the mood in other districts, and several of them, however, people view your little trick with the berries as an act of defiance, not an act of love. And if a girl from District 12, of all places, can defy the capital and walk away unharmed, what is it to stop them from doing the same? He says. What is to prevent, say, an uprising.